Welcome to the Low Carb Athlete Podcast, where we focus on discussing topics to help you burn fat, optimize health, and improve performance in life and sports. Transform the whole you from the inside out with the holistic method. Let's dive in. Here's your host, Debbie Potts.
Hey everyone, it is your host of the Low Carb Athlete, Debbie Potts. Today's show is with me and myself and I to talk about how to train, fuel, and perform the low carb athlete. As we've talked a little bit over the last few months and actually over the past 10 years, if you go back to the original podcast called Fit, Fat, Fast, we have 100 episodes in the archives on my website, debbiepotts.net. If you search under the category podcasts, you should be able to go back and find all those 100 episodes about how to eat fat to burn fat, how to improve metabolic efficiency, how to get faster and stronger as a low carb athlete. And endurance sports, as I did Ironmans, triathlon, long distance running, cycling, trail running. We used to talk about that a lot. And I know I've kind of veered on and off that track of talking about the low carb athlete over the past years too, talking about health building tips, because I really find it essential part of you being fit and healthy, the journey towards being your best self and looking at what you're doing now to improve your life when you're 60, 70, 80, 90 years old. So we want to work on performance and longevity. So we want to train the body to become metabolically efficient, be fat adapted, but also work on those hidden internal stressors that we don't know about unless we do lab testing. So I've talked about the GI map, BiomeFX, organic acids, the Dutch hormone test. So we went over my own test results with experts from those lab tests. And if you go to the Low Carb Athlete YouTube channel, you can see visually my test results and how we walk through them. And as a metabolic efficiency testing background person, I like to look at, if we could test you resting and while you're exercising, how efficient are you burning fat? And that's another way to collect clues if you can do metabolic efficiency tests. And then look at all these other lab tests and assessments. We do nutritional therapy, and then look at glucose, as with continuous glucose monitor with NutriSense. I did a show with them last fall, and video is on there as well with NutriSense, how to attach the NutriSense sensor. And then I've also done a podcast on Keto Mojo a few times with Dorian, the founder of Keto Mojo, talking about how to measure your glucose and your ketones and how to use that information. So what I want to do today is just take a moment of not having any special guests on the show and just have me talking to you about how you can improve your ability to burn fat, improve performance and longevity by what you're doing with your nutrition, with your lifestyle habits, and your training. As so many of us athletes are fit on the outside, but unhealthy, a disaster if we look under the hood. So that's why I became an FDN practitioner 2 years ago, so I can run functional lab tests, put that information and correlate it with the information I get in my nutritional therapy assessment, and then look at your genetics, even though it's more your lifestyle, your epigenetics that we want to look at improving. But then sometimes we need to take a few supplements to help with that genetic background. Looking at your ancestry background to figure out what foods are best for you. Look at metabolic typing to figure out what food plan works best for you, or if you're slow or fast oxidizer, or are you a mixed oxidizer. So we've done a podcast on metabolic typing. So what I like to do now is be a health investigator and really figure out what is the optimal program for you, for your nutrition, your exercise, your sleep, your stress, your movement throughout the day, your digestion and gut health, your immune system's there, your neurotransmitters, serotonin's primarily made there. So we want to really make sure we have a healthy gut. And in hydration, making sure we're hydrated, not just drink a lot of water, but are you putting minerals in your water, as Redmond sea salt or ancient mineral drops, or I've been using Quinton hypertonic, help kind of just the electrolytes, minerals that you can get from seawater, and then isotonic at nighttime. So there's all sorts of different things we can look at to really optimize our health from the inside out. The last of the 8 elements I was just reviewing of the holistic method that I created over 5 years ago from my own journey is a really important one: happiness. So many of us are high-performing, ambitious individuals. Athletes are not. Often we come to listen to podcasts because we have that drive, that ambition to be the best athlete we can be, or figure out how to biohack and improve our performance and longevity. But part of that, we're so driven sometimes we forget how to have fun, to let loose, to put our guard down, to be open to laughter and play and being silly. And I found that so many years as a high-charging athlete, I was competing at a high level in triathlons. I was so serious about my training and just general life. I realized, since COVID, that I really was a little bit still uptight. And with my so-called adrenal exhaustion that started in 2013, I was always just kind of anxious and stressed and worried and focused on my performance and following my schedule. And I think a lot of athletes get a little too wrapped up in their training and their performance that they forget about the other areas of life. And sometimes the philosophy, less is more, can benefit you. Instead of doing, say, CrossFit workout 5 days a week, why don't you do CrossFit 3 days a week and then do something as yoga, Pilates, core work, walking, nice easy bike ride the other days. So we really want to find that balance in everything. Homeostasis, yin and yang, finding that Goldilocks effect for you in all areas of health and fitness. There is not one size fits all. We are all individuals, and we can't say what worked for me is going to work exactly for you, because your microbiome, my thumbprint, we're different. Our genetic background, we're not 100% the same. So we want to really individualize our nutrition, exercise, and lifestyle habits based on all this information we can collect and investigate how to really be the best version of yourself, how to feel your best, live your best life, and perform your best. So let me pull up in some slides I put together, as I know a lot of us might be just starting this journey to be a fat adapted athlete. You are looking at menopause for female athletes, how to really optimize your health and performance and figure out what to do to really balance your hormones and not just go through this stereotype menopausal experience that we were told we're going to go through. Instead, we want to plan ahead and do everything we can to optimize our health. So just if you don't really know about me, if you're new to this podcast, new to my social media, The Low Carb Athlete, I have been in this industry, health and fitness, for many years. Somehow I'm 49. I'm turning 50 in November 2021, and I am doing everything I can to really be the best version of myself now, be fit and healthy on the inside out. And I am on a mission to improve the second half of my life to be better than the first half. That shouldn't be too hard, because I owned a fitness studio for 10 years, thankfully closed Fitness Forward Studio October 1st, 2019, or else I would have been a total mess having a fitness studio that was already pushing me in debt year after year. But I was too stubborn and proud to close it earlier than I should have, because I'm like that. But all those fitness studio or small business owners with the pandemic in 2020, I feel for you, because I was struggling already and totally had constant stress for 10 years running my own business. So it is not easy to be the all-in-one small business owner, because it wears you out, and it caused my own metabolic chaos. So over the 25 years, I've been a personal trainer since college and always been in health and fitness. And I went through this long journey of many certifications because I just love to learn, but really went from personal training to health coach. I was always running fitness center, and after college, just always was kind of health and fitness coach and coordinator, running programs and whatnot. But I always wanted to learn more. So over the years, I became working with Ben Greenfield as a superhuman coach, and recently did his Keon coach. Now I'm working for Ben, coaching part-time. And through that journey, I've become a Czech Institute holistic lifestyle coach. I've always done NASM, certified personal trainer. I was a USAT triathlon coach, level 1, and I went through DNA Fit coaching program. I went through Bob Seebohor's Metabolic Efficiency specialist coaching program, and I've done a lot in between that. But recently I became a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, as I said, so I can order functional lab tests for clients. And before that, functional nutritional therapy practitioner. So really putting it all together now, being a health coach, being a health detective, and really using the holistic method, 8 elements and more, to help people be fit and healthy. But a lot of my drive is because of what happened to me in 2013. I went from 2012 hitting my best race times, doing my best Ironman Canada, went to Ironman Hawaii, had a windy, hard day on the bike, but still did pretty good in my age group and was the best shape of my life. And then suddenly March 2013 was more this aha moment. Something was wrong with me, and I gained 30 pounds. I felt like overnight. I could not ride my bike. I had no strength. I was fatigued. I couldn't sleep at night. Wide awake at 2 a.m. I would have to have naps in the daytime and just had no energy at all. So that started my journey as so-called adrenal exhaustion and trying to get answers and get help, and went through multiple different coaches and practitioners and doctors trying to figure out what was wrong with me, why me, what happened to me, and why did I feel like I was the only one having this happen to. Other athletes could push the envelope and not have this metabolic chaos, internal breakdown and burnout, but not me. I had it all. So that led me to write my book, Life is Not a Race, It is a Journey, and create the holistic method program. Just knowing what I know as a personal trainer, I was never able to help people get healthy and to really burn fat and be a health optimizer by just training them twice a week. As I said earlier, there's so much more to really be healthy, not just exercising and changing what you eat. Even if you're low carb and watching your macros and balancing your blood sugar, if you're not doing the other lifestyle changes, it doesn't always work. I was doing all the right things when I had my breakdown and burnout of my body systems in 2013. I was doing Ironman training. I was doing strength training. I was doing yoga. I was training by heart rate, doing maffetone training. I was doing UCAN and other low carb fueling for my Ironmans and marathons and trail runs. But I was living rice. I was living life as a race. And I think a lot of us burn ourselves out, and you don't know it until sometimes it's a little bit too late to just recover in 2 weeks. You might have this longer duration of fixing yourself, but really figuring out what your root causes are. What are your contributors externally, your external stressors that are chronic, and then identifying your hidden internal sources of chronic stress by doing these functional lab tests, but not treating one lab test. We look at the whole picture and look at treating everything all at once, not doing one lab test, treating that, then going the next one. That doesn't work. You just get stuck in the cycle of trial and error. So we really want to investigate and everything at once. And it costs a lot of money, but I wasted years of trying to figure out how to get better until I finally ran the organic acids test last year on myself and found out no one tested me with this. And I had mold toxicity and very high levels of candida, which are common when you have mold toxicity. But I was always getting just a GI test done and a hormone test, that no one ever put 3 or 4 tests all together to see the whole picture, because all the different lab results provides clues and helps us correlate what's going on, putting those missing pieces of the puzzle together. So it's really all my experiences have led me down this path to be the coach that I wanted to have. So now that's what I'm doing. But the point of this call today isn't to talk about me or talk about my coaching program. It's to teach you a lot of the hot topics as a low carb athlete. What is metabolic flexibility? Are you fit and healthy, or are you unhealthy on the inside? I'm talking about metabolic health, optimizing your fat metabolism. There's just a lot to look at. And I think a lot of athletes just look at their training and we don't look at the recovery, the repair. What are you doing when you're not training? What are you doing to optimize your sleep? How are you eating after your workouts or later on after your workouts? What supplements are you taking? So much to go into. How's your digestion? How's your gut health? So common problems that we found over the years with endurance athletes specifically is muscle fatigue and tightness after workouts. And this is from S-Fuel's founder. They said they had findings of muscle fatigue and tightness after a 30K race. They became glucose carb dependent. Anti-inflammatory use after long training days. So many athletes had high inflammation. Digestive stress. They had GI stress. Resistant belly fat, being fit and fat. High risk for spiking and crashing blood sugars. So you're on the blood sugar roller coaster. A lot of athletes have DNFs due to gut stress and bonking, so to speak. And acute and chronic inflammation caused by blood sugar swings. So when we're doing endurance sports, it's a long distance. You're not going to be racing 3-5 hours or for a half Ironman marathon, or looking at Ironman or ultras that you're going for 10, 15, 17 hours. You need to be burning fat. It's much more efficient. Can you imagine if you're doing an Ironman burning carbs, how much fuel you have to take in? So really we want to train the body to depend on fat for fuel. And if you are a carb burner, it's a simple process. 4 to 6 weeks, sometimes 2 weeks to flip the switch, become a fat burning athlete. So we want to look at what is going on with the metabolism. So there's some articles I had in here I can put in the show notes, or you can ask me, but the well-trained fat-adapted athlete, to burn fat, we want to increase capacity to oxidize fatty acids. If we are well-trained fat-adapted athlete, we use fat for fuel, and the carbohydrates stores become limited. We keep them aside for when we really need them as rocket fuel. If we are a carb burner, you're going to store, not using that fat. We're just using those carbs, and we have to always refuel. So fat oxidization during exercise, the fat stores are reading this research article, fats are stored mostly in subcutaneous adipose tissue. Small stores of fat are in the muscle itself, intramuscular triglycerides. Fat oxidation, beta adrenergic stimulation will increase lipolysis, and that is the breakdown of fats into fatty acids and glycerol in adipose tissue and muscle. We also have the need to improve our mitochondria function. The triglycerides stored in the muscle undergo similar lipolysis, and the fatty acids can be transported into the mitochondria as well. During exercise, a mixture of fatty acids derived from adipocytes, intramuscular stores are used. There's evidence shows that trained individuals store more intramuscular fat and use more as a source of energy during exercise. That's from an article from peakenduranceport.com /endurance training and base training on fat burning using body fat instead of carbohydrates as fuel. So it's a great article to look up. So we want to train the body to be burning fat at higher heart rates. So we've talked a long time ago, we were talking about metabolic efficiency testing, and last week on the podcast, Casey, we talked about how to test that. But really look at maffetone. He talks all about that max aerobic function heart rate, and that's what I did early on in my career. I started doing Ironmans in 2001. I stopped in 2012. But over those years, I competed in 15 different Ironmans, and from 2001, I was training with heart rate monitors. I started training with Sally Edwards back in the 1995. Sounds so old, but we did work with her at the Bellevue Club where I worked Bellevue, Washington for Danskin triathlons, and started getting into teaching how to use heart rate monitors with heart zone training with Sally Edwards, and helped her with some Danskin races in Seattle. But over the years, I was training by heart rate for years. And then when I started working with Mark Allen on his elite team in 2003, 2004, I was doing Maffetone, the MAF method, max aerobic function heart rate, 180 minus your age. I was doing that for years. And then I could test my metabolic efficiency with the New Leaf testing cart when we used to have that. And so I knew what I was doing was working. I was very efficient burning fat. And over the years, I could get up to 160 heart rate. Granted, I was a lot younger, 10 years younger, and I could burn a lot of high percentage of fat up to 160 heart rate. But the max aerobic function, the MAF heart rate training method definitely works to help you train to burn fat. But it's also what you eat and your stress, because stress is on, your blood sugar is up. So pay attention to, even if you're doing heart rate training, moving into that aerobic fat burning range, working on Maffetone method, are you chronically stressed all day long? Even if you are monitoring your carbohydrates, your net carbs or total carbs, you are eating more protein and adding a lot more healthy fats in your food. You're doing intermittent fasting, doing morning low heart rate fasted workouts, but are you always stressed out? That's going to impact everything. So if you probably heard of the FASTER study, and you probably heard of Volek and Finney, Peter Attia, Professor Noakes, Paul Larson, Bob Seebohor, Dr. Dan Plews, and Peter Defty. We've talked about them over the years in the podcast. And those are many of the leaders in the fat adapted athlete world research. Simple carbs may be overriding fat burning metabolism, fat oxidization. Constant elevated insulin levels turns off your body's ability to access internal fat stores. Fueling constantly with simple carbs stops you from burning fat. Consuming carbs during exercise is, as Peter Attia says, putting paper on the fire first, preventing you from burning the logs, the fat. High fructose corn syrup, rice, pasta, bread, so-called carbo loading as we used to do in the day, before workout sessions, and then refueling post-workout with more carbs is just going to put you on that constant blood sugar roller coaster and impact your insulin levels. So constantly elevated insulin levels with or from consuming simple carbs that require constant refueling activates a blood sugar roller coaster, sucrose and fructose. Remember, high carb intake turns off fat burning stores. 2,000 calories of stored glycogen, or you can have 40,000 plus calories of stored fat fuel available. So I think of it, your big fat storage tank, that Duraflame big fat log, or kindling that you have to always refuel. So you have to ask yourself, evaluate your training and fueling performance. Are you training yourself to burn sugar, or are you burning fat? Obviously, if you're doing high intensity Spartan racing, short distance, sprinting, those heart rates are going to be higher. So your carb timing will be different than endurance athletes. And we can place those carbs appropriately to give us fuel when we need it. So it's that rocket fuel into the race. But we need to be metabolically flexibility. So our go-to fuel tank is fat. Your backup fuel tank is carbohydrates. But it's just the opposite if you are a high carb fueling athlete. Some people can tolerate more carbs than others. You can look at DNA Fit report or other genetic reports, learn more about your nutrition and exercise profile based on your genetics, and then it'll give you more information how to individualize your type of training and fueling program. So hopefully you've read The Art and Science of the Low Carb Performance by Volek and Finney. It's an excellent book that you can read over and over and over again. So the summary of the book, I'll give you a little rundown. You can buy it on Amazon. Most keto or low carb, high fat guidelines are for health issues as insulin resistance, carb intolerance, overweight, diabetes, metabolic syndrome, and other diseases. Volk and Finney were the first to write a book on low carb for athletic performance, as well as Phil Maffetone, to educate athletes on how and why to burn fat. Athletes can tolerate healthy paleo type of carbohydrate sources, and Peter Duffy talks a lot about this in his OFM, Optimal Fat Metabolism website, in his coaching program. High carbohydrate diets locks athletes into a carb dependence, using carb as their main fuel tank for exercise, only 2,000 calories when filled up. So imagine you could be burning 40,000 calories having that stored fuel if you're accessing that fuel tank. But if you're carb dependent, you are metabolically inflexible and you're burning 2,000 calories up and you're going to have to keep eating. Athletic performance decreases as well as recovery, repair, and longevity with the dependence on carbohydrates as your dominated fuel source. The body is not able to switch from carbs to fat as your main fuel source. That's metabolic flexibility, when we are able to switch back and forth, fat to carbs, back to forth. So we don't want to be inflexible. Once the carb fuel tank is depleted, then you've hit the wall, or so-called bonk, as you can't switch from fat burning back to, or you can't switch from carb burning back to fat burning if you're inflexible. Remember that fat fuel tank has 40,000 to 80,000 of stored calories versus that carb tank that has only about 2,000. So you have to ask yourself, which fuel tank are you dependent on? So there's a lot of reasons why we need to be metabolically efficient, not just longevity. You hear about the word ages, advanced glycation. On your cells, think of a bottle of jam, a stickiness. That's what your cells get to be, sticky. And so you lose those receptor sites. Sugar is toxic to the body and brain. When you eat less carbohydrates, you can go longer with fat fuel. It's a slow release of energy and preserves the backup of carb fuel tank. It's your rocket fuel, as I said. Reduced energy crash, bonking, hitting the wall, and training or racings if you become a low-carb athlete. You lose sensitivity with chronic overeating carbs. You'll become insulin resistant. Now, I became insulin resistant not from eating carbohydrates, but from chronic stress. You can gain weight even with exercise if you're insulin resistant. If you have addiction to carbs, you're going to have to eat all the time. You have reduced GI and gut stress from eating sugar bars and drinks. You're going to have more gut stress. Faster recovery and more consistent training with fat fuel versus if you were carb dependent. So if you eat carbs and you also train above your fat burning ranges as the math method, your body burns carbs over fat fuel. So that's where you will become carb dependent if you're always training in that black hole, so to speak, for training with heart rate monitors. High intensity interval training sports burns more carbs, but you can improve your body fat, and your body will train to burn higher percentage of fat. So the HIIT training, going high, going low heart rate, is a lot more effective to help you burn fat, especially after you work out, rather than staying in that black hole that's kind of above your threshold and below that anaerobic threshold point. So above your Maffetone and below your ET, anaerobic threshold. So fat burning enzymes are needed to burn fat efficiently and improve your performance. And so we want to lose that dependence on carbohydrates. Carb burners require that constant pre, during, and post-workout fueling. Fat burners may just need water with electrolytes, as Redmond sea salt or that Quinton hypertonic or Elements by Rob Wolf's company, or we've got the Jigsaw puzzle. Jigsaw Health has their electrolytes and pickleball electrolyte drink mixes. There's lots of options, but we need to realize we don't need to have Gatorade and the sugary drinks once you flip that switch and become fat adapted. So you have to wean off that sugar addiction and work on training to be a low carb athlete. So how do you do it? Well, we want to, as I said, train the slow twitch aerobic muscle fibers, which contain more of the mitochondria and help them burn fat to be fat oxidizers. We want to avoid overtraining in the under recovery by training in that black hole and having the mantra of no pain, no gain. Training above fat burning heart rate, that maffetone, results in not training the slow twitch muscle fibers. So just giving you a summary of what I just said, but that importance of training low, and then once you're ready, add intervals once a week. Train the slow twitch muscles more over time. Help get that right mix of training intensities and matching your food with your training to improve fat burning. Metabolic flexibility is important to train your body to burn fat and be able to switch back to sugar. So looking at ancestral health. So you can learn more from an article called Rethinking the Role of Fat Oxidization, and that's by Dr. Plews and Paul Larson and some other great researchers, as well as philmaffetone.com has that article in there. It's a great article to look at, as well as Dan Plews' website, Paul Larson. They both have a lot of stuff. But if we depend on burning carbs, we deplete the limited supply, remember 2,000 versus 40,000 of glycogen stored calories, instead of slow burning of fat fuel can lead to, as we know it, compromised health issues. So we need to flip that switch to have that fat fuel tank as our dominant source of fuel. So we want to do kind of a little reset and teach the body to burn fat. So we reduce that risk, that stress in the body, insulin resistance, the mitochondria damage, oxidative stress, and work on switching to fat burning. So we want to look at training, as Bob Seebohar teaches us. Metabolic efficiency is the measure of how well the body utilizes fat as energy source. Its efficiency can be improved through exercise and nutrition, exercising at lower intensities, especially early in the training cycle. And then he says supporting stable blood sugars by eating more proteins, healthy fats, fruits, vegetables, instead of the high carbohydrate foods. And you can learn a lot from Bob Seebohar. The body can only store about 2,000 calories. We said that, but the energy source is depleted by 2 to 3 hours of moderate exercise. In contrast, fats are more slowly converted to energy. So you can listen to our last podcast about metabolic efficiency testing to learn about what our Q value and crossover point is, and figure out how you can test and not guess what your ranges are. Maffetone, we've got tons of podcasts with him over the last 10 years, teaching you how to burn that fat on your body. So are you storing? I know a lot of athletes don't lose weight. They do all this endurance training and you don't lose weight. And I think that has to do with being a poor fat burner, hormone imbalance, blood sugar irregularity, too high, too low, that blood sugar roller coaster, eating too frequently and not eating meals. But then you get into how you're eating, why you're eating, when you're eating, looking at intermittent fasting when it's appropriate for athletes, when it's appropriate for females. Really looking at individualizing your nutrition plan for females. Got a great podcast with Dr. Mindy, and talking more in the future about how to train and fuel based on your menstrual cycle for women, and watch your fasting, that you're not fasting too much, and when to time your harder workouts, and when to have a little more carbohydrates to help your estrogens, progesterones in the week before your cycle starts. So lots of good information on our other podcasts. But I've also talked to Peter Defty a lot about optimal fat metabolism. There's no one size fits all. And optimal fat metabolism is an individualized pathway to get you back to burning fats, your aerobic energy source. And it's really not labeling. I don't like labeling even low carb. I don't like saying keto or carnivore. And it's really learning how to eat right for your body, your metabolic type, so you balance your blood sugar. And Peter and I have talked a lot about that in episodes. But really knowing that you can take in a little more carbohydrate, especially on your higher workout days. For like me, weekends, Saturday, Sunday, long bike ride, long run, I tend to do, and intentionally, a 5-2 plan, 5 days doing lower carbs and then a little bit more higher carbs on the weekends. So you can really look at your nutrition, how to fuel differently so you're getting enough carbohydrates and when to place your carbohydrates. If you use NutriSense, it's interesting. You can really see if your carb timing is working because your blood sugar won't spike if you eat in a certain window after you exercise, and your blood sugar will be good. So lots of information to go into, but just kind of finish up last little bit here on the challenges of athletes. So I think looking at OFM pyramid, looking at being fat adapted metabolic state by going low carb, say a 21 day or 4 to 6 weeks that you're really eliminating those inflammatory foods. I have clients eliminate, well, I don't like to think about what you eliminate. I like to think about what you can eat. So eating lots of good grass-fed meat, get your protein, getting lots of healthy fats with each meal, getting your vegetables, crucifix vegetables, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, growing your own broccoli sprouts itself is easy to do. Adding into your foods, having some cauliflower cooked in good healthy fats, and getting those crucifix vegetables that are good for your hormones and your liver health, and really work on just getting rid of the crap and focus on eating real good food. So we want to teach your body that fat is your fuel and teach you how to be fat adapted with, like we said about training by heart rate, keeping heart rate low. And then when you're ready, you can add some interval training, but not overtraining. Measuring with Oura Ring, how you can track your heart rate variability, using that Oura Ring to know when to reschedule workouts or make that workout a nice walk instead of going for a run, or instead of doing some high intensity workout, maybe that'll be a nice easy bike ride. You know, some days you're going to do a hilly bike ride, maybe that Oura Ring and that sleep score isn't so great, you're not going to push yourself that day. So reduce carbohydrates, but a lot of people that do a keto plan are not based on athletes. So 50 grams of net carbs a day might be too low for you. So don't punish yourself saying, oh, I'm going to stick with 50 grams. When you're exercising heavier days, you can tolerate a little more carbohydrates, but don't let them be crappy carbohydrates. Have some potatoes, like sweet potatoes, or have higher amount of vegetables, and work on quality of food that's in season, food that's local, and not get the crappy. And it doesn't mean you can eat whatever you want, but get the good stuff. So questions you have, I know I'm just touching on some of these topics and getting into the conversation of how to be metabolically efficient, how to be fat adapted. Lots of information in past podcasts. But I think looking at or listening to the podcast with Dr. Gabrielle Leon, where we talked about eating more protein, I think women as they age, specifically female athletes, as we reach menopause, that we need to lift weights more, not do like 15, 20 reps of stuff, but lift heavy things, and just do that 2 to 3 times a week, 20 minutes. It doesn't take, more than 30 minutes you don't need. You can get a ton of workout in a short amount of time, using kettlebells, using bricks, rocks, sandbags, you can do a lot. But also eating more protein, as Dr. Leon says, 1 gram of protein per goal body weight. So if you want to be 130 pounds, strive to have 130 grams of protein a day, but we want to spread it out. So it's 20 to 30, max 40 grams of protein at once. So having, say you fast and you have your main meal, lunch, and then have a lighter second meal is your dinner time, evening, 3 hours before bed. So your 8-hour eating window is between 11 and 7. And then you'll have those meals that you have your protein. Maybe in between that, you have some collagen protein mixed with some Mighty Maca or Athletic Greens, and you use that for a drink to get more protein. Maybe have a cup of bone broth and have some MCT oil and add some electrolytes, sea salt in it. I like truffle sea salt. So there's ways to get more protein in throughout the day, but eating in that 8-hour window if you are intermittent fasting. And knowing that you could do lower carbs 5 days a week and then go higher carbohydrates 2 days a week. So maybe it's a weekend. And then for women, if your cycle, whatever, day 1 to day 7 of your cycle, you can go lower carb, but the week before your cycle, you want to add in a little more carbs. And I'm going to write a blog on that this week. Hopefully I have time on the foods. Dr. Mindy Pelez was saying progesterone foods to eat more of, and estrogen foods like chia seeds and flax seeds, and adding those in the week to 2 week before your cycle starts when your estrogen's higher, what foods to add in, and then progesterone foods. But I'm trying to tie in all this information together for you because there's a lot of info for keto, low carb, just for general health. They're not athletes. And then there's a lot of information on fasting, but not fasting for women and not fasting for female athletes. And then a lot of those people are talking about all that stuff. No one's really talking about stress, how stress impacts everything. If you're doing all the right things with exercise and nutrition, but you're constantly stressed, that's an area of opportunity. And then if you work on doing anything too much, I think that's a stress. So we need to individualize what you need. And lifting weights, working on more anabolic to balance out the catabolic. That's stress, doing cortisol, increasing, exercising over 45 minutes is going to raise your cortisol. So if we're doing long distance events, training for Ironmans, marathons, trail running, cycling, we need to mitigate that damage. So what are some things that we can do to help keep our hormones healthy and happy, our microbiome healthy, because we can cause leaky gut from exercising in the warmer weather. And so what do we do to optimize our health from the inside out? So we'll work on that. So like not right after your workout, but later that day, have some athletic greens, have some bone broth. Are you taking some Keon aminos before you work out and some creatine before you do your strength workout? Are you doing that afterwards? Are your cardio workouts, are you doing anything for gut health later on? It's taking some glutamine and some amino acids and having that in capsules or add it into a smoothie. So there's different things I was looking at, like GI Resolve and different powder mixes. You can add in all those nutrients for your gut health into a protein smoothie. I like Ancient Nutrition's bone broth, or it's called keto protein, but it has bone broth in it. So I've been adding a bunch of other stuff like chia seeds and flax seeds and coconut flakes and a little almond butter to make it taste better, and then add my Mighty Maca or athletic greens in there and add some glutamine, and you can get some colostrum, and you can really make this gut repair recovery drink, but you don't want to do it right after your workout. You want to wait and let your body recover on its own. So much to talk about, right? To really optimize your health, I would start with, being a fat adapted athlete, but working on your sleep. That's number one. Prioritize your sleep. Then work on your nutrition, your exercise, and your movement throughout the day. I don't care if you worked out for an hour that morning. Are you sitting on your behind the rest of the day? I want you to get up every hour that I need to do now. Go for a little mini walk outside, come back in. Do a set of squats, do a set of push-ups every hour. Get up and move. But sleep. I'll end this podcast today. Prioritize your sleep. So I work backwards with people. Create a sleep hygiene routine. If you get up at 5:30 a.m., 6 a.m., what time should you go to bed? You need 8 hours of sleep. So figure out what time you need to wake up. Go backwards from that. When should you stop eating? 3 hours before you go to bed, at least. And having a sleep hygiene routine is writing in a gratitude journal, taking time to do a little yin yoga, some stretching on the floor, some relaxation, doing some meditation, journaling, taking sleepy time herbal tea, all sorts of things you can do. A little sleepy time tincture, some GABA production supplements you can have. You can test things out, see what you need. But getting the functional lab testing to identify what are you out of balance in now, you have to test. Are you low in GABA? Is your dopamine production, your melatonin, your cortisol rhythm? What's going on? What's going on in your microbiome? What's going on in your pathogens, your yeast, fungus, dysbiosis? There's so much more to look at. So if you're really serious about improving your performance and you care about your aging process, I would find a practitioner that can look at the whole picture and put the missing pieces of the puzzle together to help you restore balance in your body and make sure you're able to live your best, look your best, and perform your best in life. So with that, blab, 45 minutes. Hopefully you got something out of this. And we'll have a guest back on the show next week, Angela. We're going to talk about little performance gains through biohacking and how stress really impacts the whole you. So hopefully you can reach out to me if you have questions, debbiepotts.net, social media, The Low Carb Athlete on Instagram, and also on Facebook. So let me know what you're doing this year to be a low carb athlete, what races you might have coming up, and how are you working on being fat adapted and working on that recovery and repair so your HRV, heart rate variability score, and readiness score is looking pretty good. And that deep sleep score on your Oura ring, you're getting it up 15 to 20%. So check it out, get those biohacks in there, and work on your aging process. Talk to you soon. Enjoy the day.
Thanks for listening to the Low Carb Athlete Podcast. If you have any questions, feedback, or topic suggestions, let us know on Facebook or at debbiepotts.net. You can help us to continue to grow by leaving a review on iTunes. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.